Good evening, everybody. The president has created some consternation in Washington, D.C. He decided to put the critical issues of border security and immigration, at least partly, in the hands of rhino Republicans and left-wing Democrats. How did DACA, illegal immigrants, and amnesty all get to the front of the line, and the forgotten man and woman for whom the president campaigned get pushed into the shadows of the swamp? We'll take up the fallout of embracing amnesty with conservative commentator, best-selling author, and firebrand Ann Coulter. Also tonight, House Republicans are now investigating whether deep state bad actors helped leak to the media. I can tell them right now, yes, they did. New text messages between anti-Trump FBI agent Peter Strzok and attorney Lisa Page, also involved with Mr. Strzok, suggests they were leaking stories to media outlets. How many and how important, we take up here tonight. And the top Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, Senator Dianne Feinstein, is under fire tonight. She single-handedly, unilaterally released the transcript of the classified closed-door interview with smear merchant Fusion GPS co-founder Glenn Simpson. Naturally, neither Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley nor his committee staff has any idea what to do about it. They don't like it, but they don't know, obviously, what to do about it. We take that up with Chris Farrell of Judicial Watch here in just moments. Our top story tonight, President Trump risking his populist movement and conservative base to pursue amnesty with Democrats, not one of which has ever voted for or with the president on a single issue or piece of legislation, all of whom support his detractors and his tormentors, or simply mock the president and his agenda. President Trump today held a bipartisan, bicameral meeting in the White House to discuss immigration reform and brought in the White House press corps to video the historic openness of this White House. One of the more stunning moments in that meeting, when the president expressed interest in striking a deal on DACA, Obama-era amnesty that shielded roughly 800,000 illegal immigrants from deportation. President Trump said he would be willing to take the heat for the approach, which many of his supporters considered to be outright amnesty. Fox News Chief White House correspondent John Roberts has our report.
My positions are going to be what the people in this room come up with.
With the clock running on a March 5th deadline to find a legislative solution on the so-called Dreamers, President Trump brought Republicans and Democrats together at the White House with the cameras rolling.
I feel having the Democrats in with us is absolutely vital, because this should be a bipartisan bill. This should be a bill of love. Truly, it should be a bill of love, and we can do that.
It started with public statements tailored for TV coverage, but over time, the lenses appeared to fade into the background, and lawmakers got down to some real position setting and negotiation. Senator Lindsey Graham suggesting a DACA fix could be the opening bid for another stab at comprehensive immigration reform.
I'm not going to support a bill if you don't support it. I can hear the drumbeat coming. Right-wing radio and TV talk show hosts are going to beat the crap out of us because it's going to be amnesty.
If we do this properly, DACA, you're not so far away from comprehensive immigration reform. And if you want to take it that further step, I'll take the heat. I don't care. I don't care. I'll take all the heat you want to give me. And I'll take the heat off both the Democrats and the Republicans. My whole life has been heat. I like heat in a certain way.
With all due respect, Bob and Mike and Lindsey, there are some things that you're proposing that are going to be very controversial and will be an impediment to agreement.
But you're going to negotiate those things. You're going to sit down. You're going to say, listen, we can't agree here. We'll give you half of that. You're going to negotiate those things.
Comprehensive means comprehensive.
No. The president went into the meeting demanding security provisions, a wall, an end to chain migration, ending the visa lottery, and more ICE agents in return for a DACA fix. At one point, Senator Dianne Feinstein said the process needs to be split up, leave border security for later.
What about a clean DACA bill now, with a commitment that we go into a comprehensive immigration reform procedure.
The president seemed to entertain the idea.
I have no problem. I think that's basically what Dick is saying.
But House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy jumped in to say, hold on a minute.
We don't want to be back here 2 years later. You have to have security.
White House officials say that after the cameras left, the president reached agreement with the two sides to do immigration in two phases. The first, DACA, including border security and end to chain migration and the visa lottery. Then second, comprehensive immigration reform. Democrats indicated they'll give it a shot.
I think the president actually wants to strike a deal. Now, whether that deal is strikeable is another question, but I think it's possible.
Letting the cameras stay for most of the meeting appeared to serve two purposes. After charges in the new book Fire and Fury that he was mentally incapable of being president, the exercise showed President Trump in command of a meeting with 22 lawmakers. And there was the rare glimpse behind the curtain of how the legislative sausage is made.
A number of individuals in the room felt it was a good thing to let you see the cooperation and the conversation between both sides and see how we're working and leading to move the ball down the field and come up with some real solutions.
Just how much cooperation there will be in the upcoming negotiations seems to be an open question. After he left the meeting, the House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer said that there was unanimity in the room about the need to address the issue of the Dreamers, but wouldn't go beyond that. Lou?
John, thank you very much. John Roberts reporting from the White House on what was certainly a singular day at the swamp. More evidence of corruption at the highest levels of the FBI tonight. A Justice Department Inspector General, great to have you here.
Thank you, Lou.
And great continued work on all of this. It is stunning. Just how incriminating do you believe these texts to be? And how in the world did we ever get a hold of them?
You got a hold of the texts really because of Judicial Watch litigation, because we pursued all these matters in U.S. District Court in D.C. with respect to emails and texts. We have any number of other cases still outstanding, but that's really a byproduct of that effort because they knew the heat was on. They knew that it wasn't going to go away, wasn't going to stop. There was sufficient interest and pressure. And so this is a case of them, I think, trying to get out ahead of the problem because obviously Strzok and his girlfriend are already in bad shape. But the text messages today show that they were synchronizing, they were first of all leaking, but then synchronizing their story to both the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and perhaps others. And that is a level of investigative misconduct and abusive process that is off the charts.
And it is a crime.
It is.
And do we expect there to be a prosecution?
One would certainly hope so. Attorney General Sessions, call your office.
I've been hoping for a lot of years.
Yeah. This is a case where when you have federal agents at this level, and one of whom is an attorney who has an extra duty or obligation above and beyond even ordinary citizen would have, they know what they're doing. They're kind of teasing and joking, flirting back and forth, talking about, hey, it's the Wall Street Journal articles behind the paywall. Should we play dumb about it?
You know what's funny about that is they're behind the paywall. They couldn't be energetic enough or free enough with their coin to get a subscription. For crying out loud. It's stunning. Strzok and Page also were part of the Mueller special counsel team discussed in the FBI Deputy Director McCabe. I mean, there's so many numbers floating around here.
Yep.
Coming up with the insurance plan, apparently in McCabe's office, to thwart President Trump's election as president.
Right. And that's a case really of, at least my interpretation of it and all the information I've seen so far, that's an effort to take the Fusion GPS file, or whatever you want to call it, smear job, and use that as leverage to obtain FISA warrants to spy on Trump officials. Including
General Flynn, presumably.
Correct. Correct. And so they needed any excuse they could use, and that's what they used.
I think it's interesting. Glenn Simpson, one of the co-founders of Fusion GPS, the smear merchant, it's a lot more than that. And it has touched the lives, obviously, of a lot of politicos in both parties. But he wanted that testimony released, and Dianne Feinstein today did it unilaterally.
She obliged him. She did. Part of me is almost relieved. My opinion is get all this stuff out public. because the cockroaches hate sunlight.
Right.
And so, you know, this guy's going to play a double game where he does one thing in front of the committee and then goes to the New York Times and runs an op-ed saying, oh, I want my story released. I think the most telling thing out of that transcript, and people have latched on to this claim that someone was killed with respect to the dossier, realize that was not testimony, right? That was Simpson's attorney, a very sharp guy by the name of Joshua Levy, and he was jumping in to object to Simpson's.
Now, do you say sharp in lieu of a man of high principle and great integrity?
I say he's a very good lawyer. I'll let you interpret that. But you can see the difference between an experienced litigator and the investigative counsel staff, who in many cases are really just policy analysts who went to law school. And there's a hell of a big difference between those two kind of animals.
At this point, all of the noise, all of the electric moments that are being produced here, no one's gone to jail. No one is facing charges. And we have a special counsel that continues to dog President Trump and his administration. And there isn't enough integrity on Capitol Hill to come to his aid and join with him in saying, cut the nonsense. As he said, this is embarrassing to the nation. This is a banana republic right now with this kind of nonsense going on.
Yeah, you've got Mueller running around investigating a circle or a universe of people in search of a crime. Right. No one can articulate to you what the criminal predicate is. No one. And so they're running around, and if you dig long enough, you're going to find something. You know, he has a parking ticket in the day. There's going to be something there. But the disparity in treatment, that's what irritates the hell out of the American public.
Clinton and Trump.
The disparity of treatment with respect to Clinton officials who, you know, or excuse me, Obama officials who wildly abuse the system, and Clinton officials for that matter. And then the level of scrutiny that is occurring with respect to this Mueller investigation, it's completely out of whack.
And it seems that there seems to be a very strong alliance between the leadership of the Democratic Party and that of the Republican Party. Oddest thing.
Well, sitting around that cabinet table today, it was a love fest, literally and figuratively. The president wants a bill of love.
It's what the president called the legislation he is looking for that will inspire DACA and realize it. Chris Farrell, as always, great to have you here.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much. The swamp is not getting, well, it's neither getting smaller nor drier. We just wanted to get that bulletin out to you. We're coming right back with much, much more. Stay with us. It's worth your patience. We guarantee it. We'll be right back. President Trump apparently willing to negotiate with the despicable Dems and all those rhinos on the subject of amnesty.
I really do believe Democrat and Republican, the people sitting around this table, want to get something done.
The swamp, deeper and broader than ever, and we take that up with Ed Rollins and Ann Coulter here next. And weeks after the worst wildfires in California history, that state faces a new threat: flash floods and mudslides. We'll have the story, the video, and much more straight ahead. Stay with us. Joining me now, Ed Rollins, former White House political director under President Ronald Reagan, Fox Business contributor. Ed, great to see you.
Thank you.
This is a peculiar day. The president with Lindsey Graham, Jeff Flake, and I mean all sorts of people. Bob Menendez, for crying out loud, Dick Durbin, all part of the gang. Well, not all of them, but Menendez and Durbin, certainly part of the mess in 2006. What is going on?
It's hard for me to say, because the most sacred vow the president made is, I'm going to build a wall, and if I do immigration, it's going to be properly done in a way that basically guarantees that it'll work. This today was a performance, I hope, and certainly the details weren't there, but the impression he gave is that he's going to do a deal with the Democrats, and if he does that, he'll basically lose his base, and it won't work. Anytime Democrats are happy, my experience in 50 years of working in Washington, D.C. around it is, when they're happy and they're joyous, it's usually not to the advantage of Republicans, and it's certainly not to the advantage of this president. And the fact that he was had Democrats on both sides of them, and he's nodding his head and talking about this being a bill of love. A bill of love is not something you need in immigration. Immigration is a matter of toughness. It's a matter of basically making sure that the country's borders are protected. He's talked about that every single trip he's made.
Yeah. He campaigned against amnesty.
Absolutely.
He campaigned for the wall. He campaigned against the status quo.
Right.
And yet here's the establishment, for crying out loud. Lindsey Graham, Jeb Bush, chiming in today to compliment, to congratulate the president. These two people who were running against him
And lost.
and lost badly. I don't even I can't even put a matrix together that makes any sense of their sudden participation in public life.
Well, you can't open the borders. You can't basically say the people that are here without any other steps being taken get to stay here. You basically have to say, we're going to protect, going to make sure this doesn't repeat itself. The mistake of the 86 bill is we let 2.5 million people come in.
The lesson is really simple, isn't it?
It's very simple.
Build a wall, then you can begin to take up immigration reform.
And then you can start putting them in line.
For a decade and a half, I have said this, that's a straightforward syllogism. You cannot meaningfully reform immigration law of any kind if you can't control immigration. And you can't control immigration unless you have the wall, the borders and ports of entry protected. It's that straightforward. And did you hear sweet Senator Feinstein cooing ever so nicely and calmly about, well, we'll take up border security later, Mr. President. I mean, good Lord.
I've said this on this show before. President Obama had a Democrat majority, wanted to do immigration reform, couldn't get it done. George W. Bush had majorities in both the House and Senate, couldn't get it done. President Trump is not going to get it done unless he basically stands by his principles, and his principles are the security side. And then you can compromise somewhat with the Democrats, but you can't compromise before you even begin the debate.
And I have to tell you, I enjoyed watching the maestro as he conducted that orchestra of, what was it, 22 lawmakers. I mean, they were just sitting there hanging on his every word, waiting for their opportunity to be fed whatever their favorite delicacy is. It's, my gosh, you know, the president handled them. What I'm afraid of is that Lindsey Graham and a few others will be taken seriously, which I think would be awful.
Well, once they start writing this bill, it won't be seriously. There's no way you can do it. There's no magic formula. You can't basically say the 11 million people can go free.
Excuse me. Well, Ed, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And our poll question is, do you believe any deal on the border and immigration must require building the wall and ending chain migration and lottery visas before there can be any change to DACA or any discussion of any kind of amnesty? Cast your vote. We're coming right back. A few thoughts tonight on what our president may be doing on two issues, illegal immigration and border security. And let's be really very clear. I believe President Trump sincerely wants to do the right thing on both issues. I believe he wants to trade DACA for the end of chain migration and lottery visas, and he wants the wall built. But for all the world, today he surrounded himself in the White House with many of the very people who place their party above the interest of the nation. And they've done so since the legislation that was called McCain-Kennedy, Comprehensive Immigration Reform. They fought for a decade for open borders, and they've demanded amnesty for all illegal immigrants. Demanded, I say, not requested or discussed a pathway. They have demanded it. Senators Perdue and Cotton are among those who've long championed rational immigration policies and border security, but their views were in a tiny minority today at that table. There is nothing rational about the proposals that Dems, Menendez, Durbin, and Hoyer have championed since 2006. But alarmingly, border crossings of illegal immigrants have already returned to the same levels as in the presidency of Barack Obama. And the costs of illegal immigration continue to rise, more than $100 billion more than the value of their contributions to the economy. Each illegal immigrant is estimated to cost taxpayers $75,000. But the real issue now is, how did the Democrats' issue of DACA crowd all the way to the head of the line while the interests of the president's base have been pushed into the shadows of the swamp. What happened to the president's America First doctrine? What happened to hire American, buy American? And then there's Davos. Suddenly, our president is headed to Switzerland. How in the world did our president end up on the tortured agenda of the global elitists who meet every year in the Swiss mountains, where they seem to hide out and chum around a bit? That's fine. They're out of the way for at least a time. But the Chamber of Commerce and the Business Roundtable, the two principal business lobbyists in this country, tonight they have to be kind of proud of themselves. But then they've spent $1.5 billion lobbying in the swamp to get the result they wanted on just two issues, and you guessed it, open borders and, of course, amnesty. Those are just code words for cheap labor and Democratic voters. And you should know, Mr. President, that President Tom Donahue, the head of the Chamber of Commerce today, talked about your tax reform, your capital repatriation. You're driving the economy to 4% growth and 4% unemployment and record high markets. And do you know what, Mr. President? Donahue didn't mention your name, not once. Isn't that interesting? Just in case you think any of these people are your friends or that they'll do business straight up and on the square. Whether it's the left or the GOP, the establishment will continue to beat you around the ears if you give them the opportunity. And I hope you will never, ever do that. A reminder, Mr. President, you ran against the status quo, the establishment, and you assured us your vision and leadership would make America great again. And by golly, you've had a year unlike any other president of doing exactly that. No better a reminder of the importance of draining that damn swamp. Your good friend, Governor Jeb Bush today, and of course, Senator Lindsey Graham. So quick to please, isn't he? Congratulated you on your DACA decision. Low energy, Mr. Establishment, the guy you reduced to tears on the campaign trail, and John McCain's, well, his sidekick. They love your new direction. I hope it isn't your new direction. Our quotation of the evening, this one from Andrew Jackson. And yes, there's a reason I'm quoting Andrew Jackson. Every good citizen makes his country's honor his own and cherishes it not only as precious, but as sacred. He is willing to risk his life in its defense and is conscious that he gains protection while he gives it. Godspeed, Mr. President. We're coming right back. President Trump promised to be the law and order president. He promised to stop amnesty, and he promised to build a wall.
In this race for the White House, I am the law and order candidate.
I am the law and order candidate.
What is the president up to? Has he forgotten the men and women who've been forgotten for so long and for whom he campaigned? Conservative commentator and best-selling author Ann Coulter joins me next. And not everyone is hating the bitter cold temperatures. Berkeley the bear is braving the Arctic outbreak and loving every minute of it. We'll show you how in the video here next. We're coming right back. Joining us tonight, political commentator, conservative commentator, best-selling author Ann Coulter. Her most recent book is called In Trump We Trust. And great to have you with us. You watched the something of a love fest in the cabinet room with the president today, with some, again, of the most unheralded senators serving in either party. What do you make of it?
When Kevin McCarthy is the hardliner on immigration in the room, I think we can call this the lowest day in the Trump presidency. I mean, he was clearly trying to overcome the bad press of this Michael Wolff book by showing, oh, he's in command. But in fact, what he did was fulfill every description of him in the Michael Wolff book. He doesn't listen. He has no command of the facts. He agrees with the last person who
we don't
speaks
need
to
to
him.
go through the whole damn book by Michael Wolff. It's a bunch of trash anyway. But what I want to ask you is...
No, it isn't.
Yes,
second by second, he was doing...
let me tell you what. Yes, it is. And for the purpose of this...
He was doing exactly, literally 30 seconds. Di-Fi says she wants a standalone Dreamer bill. He agrees with that. Kevin McCarthy has to step in and say, no, sir, I think we need border security first. He agrees with that. He's agreeing with people with a 60-second lag. And the Democrats are just taking the position, no, we won't take anything but the Dreamers.
Yeah, well, he says, without question, he says that he's going to have the wall. The problem I have, frankly, is that there was no discussion of the sequence in which these events would occur. And we know that if the wall is not, and I mean constructed, built, before there's any discussion of quote-unquote immigration reform, we know what's not going to happen. That wall is not going to be built, is it?
No, of course not. And any amnesty is a 100% amnesty because it goes to the courts. And the courts will say, oh, you may have limited this to left-handed redheads who came here at age 0 through no fault of their own. But gosh, we're going to open it up to everyone. Yeah. And then through chain migration, they get to bring all of their relatives. And actually, I can't say you're wrong. You can say anything about that press conference today, called by Trump himself. He thought this was going to be a great shining moment. At any one moment, you can say he was agreeing to anything. He agreed with Di-Fi. Yes, we'll have a standalone Dreamer bill, just granting everybody amnesty, and we'll get to that comprehensive immigration stuff later. No, whoa, this is a disaster. It was the lowest day of his presidency.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more about the difficulty of the day. Let me put it that way. Look, I am an absolute committed supporter of this president. I am also absolutely, without question and unreservedly, a champion of his wall and making certain that we secure the borders before there's any talk with the... This was an assemblage of some of the worst lights of the Kennedy, McCain effort to create comprehensive immigration reform. And a reminder to everyone in Washington, what you do when you don't have a solution is you expand the problem. They made it comprehensive, vast,
well,
and by the way,
and also,
still no progress on it.
It seems, yes, but it seems as if Trump thinks he's going to get all this great press by giving the left everything they want. I promise you, he's not going to get good press from this. They're still going to say he has dementia. If anything, they have more arguments now with him jumping around and abandoning his base. His only hope is to be pedal to the metal, fulfill his promises, build the wall, end chain migration, and deport these dreamers who are, again, as I said last week, they ought to go before MS-13. They are just a Mexican Antifa.
That may be one
they
of
are
your...
the worst of the illegals.
You know, and you don't like the way they create so much trouble. By the way, the average age of these so-called dreamers, the president himself refers to them as kids. They are far from it.
He corrected himself on that. That was actually one of the high moments of the press conference. I mean, every once in a while, I could go through and give you 30 seconds where he was great. But then the next answer is, I'll take the heat. It'll be comprehensive immigration reform.
Well, he did say that.
It's not disputing the Michael Wolff book.
Well, it is. The reason I don't like the Michael Wolff book is because it's filled with trash and fraud and fiction. And you know better than to use it as some sort of compass.
Some of it is.
On the bottom.
If you actually read it, if you exclude the bad stuff, it's not that bad for Trump. It's tough on the press. It's good on the Russian investigation.
To sit here and boost a really bad book like that. You know.
I'm sure those people told him that, and they're the ones who were hired into the White House by Trump. If he doesn't want people bad-mouthing him, he ought to hire people who supported him.
Yeah. Or find people of integrity, which I think he has now discovered is a decided advantage. Ann Coulter, it's always good to have you with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. Do you believe any deal on the border and immigration must require building the wall and ending chain migration and lottery visas before there can be any change to DACA? Cast your vote on Twitter. We'd like to hear from you. And please roll the video. Meet Berkeley. He's a Kodiak bear. Now, do you want to talk about the difference someday between a Kodiak, a brown bear, and a grizzly? It's a fascinating discussion. We don't have time because Berkeley is having a lot of fun, and we don't want to miss a moment of it, turning a frozen river in Alberta, Canada, into his personal slip and slide and having a ball. Well done, Berkeley. Up next, North Korea, South Korea sitting down for a rare meeting on easing tensions between the two countries. President Trump hopes the talks will succeed.
I spoke with the president, as you know, with President Moon of South Korea. He thanked me very much for my tough stance. I hope it works out. I very much want to see it work out between the two countries.
Will it work out? We'll take it up with Ambassador John Bolton here next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Joining us tonight, John Bolton, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, now Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, Fox Business contributor. Ambassador, let's start with this. It looks like peace in our time on the Korean Peninsula. Aren't you pleased?
Well, I think this is a complete waste of oxygen. I think it's a propaganda stunt by the North Koreans, basically. And I think the reason for it is the South Korea government is open to this kind of manipulation by North Korea. So we'll have scenes of the two Koreas parading on television together at the Olympic opening ceremony. But as far as the North Korean nuclear threat is concerned, it won't change a thing.
So what are we to do here? The president has been clear as he could be that he will not tolerate a nuclear North Korea. What is he to do? Because this looks like another, another gambit on the part of Kim Jong-un, which is to both stave off consequences for his choice to pursue nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. Where are we?
Well, I think there's every reason to believe this is more proof that the North is very close to having this capability to hit targets in the United States. I don't think they're there yet. I think we have a very limited amount of time. I think the president gave China every opportunity to use its unique capability to affect the North Koreans. There's no evidence that the Chinese have done anything meaningful. So I think we've got to come down to look at this very unattractive but perhaps necessary choice of using military force to deny North Korea the capability to threaten innocent American civilians or actually attack them. Now, we're all concerned about South Korea. Nobody blinks at the danger that they're in. But remember, the president's job is to protect American citizens. And the more North Korea and China understand that that threat is real, if there's any chance of a diplomatic outcome, it increases that chance. It doesn't diminish it.
The unilateralism of the South Korean president is perhaps a terrific point of departure. That is where we could begin withdrawing our troops from the DMZ, from that position in just below North Korea, and at least move those troops out of harm's way because they're not really doing much. Certainly the existence of Seoul itself should be an impediment to Kim Jong-un doing anything untoward. What do you think?
Well, I think you have to keep in mind South Korea is very split politically. The leader of the opposition just a few weeks back called for the redeployment of American tactical nuclear weapons to show how much they're concerned about North Korea. Don't forget Japan, vitally dependent on our presence there.
The opposition leader doesn't run it. I mean, my point is, what are we doing when the president of South Korea thinks he should be basically giving away the store to Kim Jong-un, and peace at any price is his doctrine, it seems to be.
It's dangerous for South Korea, there's no doubt about it.
But it shouldn't be necessarily dangerous for our troops who are stationed there to prevent precisely what we all fear.
Well, look, that's why I think ultimately if we had proceeded earlier, we could have had a deal with China on reunifying the peninsula, essentially under South Korean control, because we could move American troops back to Busan. We don't want to be on the DMZ. We don't want to be on the Yalu River either.
We don't want to be on the peninsula.
Well, I think we need to be there for the foreseeable future. But the main threat right now remains the North Korean nuclear program, and there's nothing that's going to stop it at this point.
We're way over.
Other than the use of force.
Ambassador John Bolton, good to have you with us. Thank you,
Lou.
Heavy rains triggering deadly mudslides in Southern California. At least 13 people have been killed throughout Santa Barbara County as mud flows down barren hills there. Those hills ravaged by last month's wildfires, stripping them, and of course, no way to stop the deluge of rain and the mudslides that result. Up next, the left out of viable presidential candidates, so they're looking to Oprah to save their party in 2020. Wow, now there's an interesting idea. But as they say, be careful what you wish for. We take that up with Charlie Kirk. Straight ahead. Stay with us. In our online poll, we ask you, do you believe it's past time for the Department of Justice to not merely demote the corrupt Bruce Orr for his collusion with the Clintons and Fusion GPS, but to fire him outright? 98% of you responded, yes, it is. Well, liberals and the fake news media are among those going crazy over the very idea of Oprah's potential 2020 presidential bid. President Trump, however, isn't in the least concerned.
Albino, Oprah would be a lot of fun. I like Oprah. I don't think she's going to run.
And part of the reason she might not want to is because already people are beginning to sort through her past and leftists ignoring Oprah's controversial past, or at least some of her past. Comments like this in a 2013 interview with the BBC, quote, she said, "You know, as long as people can be judged by the color of their skin, problems not solved. There are still generations of people, older people, who were born and bred and marinated in it, in that prejudice and racism, and they just have to die." Well, joining me now, Charlie Kirk, founder, executive director of the Young Conservatives Group, Turning Point USA. Charlie, great to see you. What do you make of the Oprah candidacy? It looks like it might be a problem.
It smells a little bit like desperation. Look, I will say she's probably more of a formidable candidate than some of these other names being floated out, like Pocahontas from Massachusetts, because I do think she would excite a liberal base that really Hillary Clinton was unable to do with the African-American vote. But look, be very careful what you wish for, Democrats. She's someone that I do not think has been through this sort of political backlash. And honestly, look, you look at some of those comments that she said, could you imagine if a Republican said something like that? They would have been barred from running absolutely completely. So I say be careful what you wish for, but it also smells like desperation. This is a president that is winning right now. This is a president that is succeeding. So Democrats are just trying to find anyone that might be popular, that might have a little bit of money that can excite their base. It really seems like desperation right now.
Let me get a sense from you. What did you make of it? Watching the president today in the cabinet room with 22 lawmakers, Democrats and Republicans, even some members of the leadership there, holding forth and taking up DACA and amnesty and wanting to do apparently a deal on comprehensive so-called immigration reform.
Yeah, and I have so much respect for Ann Coulter, and I agree with her on a lot. I have a kind of contrarian view to this. I saw nothing wrong with the meeting. I thought it demonstrated leadership, quite frankly. Look, on the same day he holds this meeting, he also remained true to his campaign promise, rescinding this temporary citizenship to the El Salvadorians, the 200,000, temporary immigrants, which takes a lot of political courage. So look, he didn't hard commit to anything. He turned to Steny Hoyer from Maryland and said, so you're going to work this out, right? He's putting the pressure on these politicians, and he remains committed to build the wall. He remains committed to have America first. You and I have spent time with him. I don't think he's going to capitulate on that. I mean, he's a man of his word, and spending time with them.
I don't think so either. But when he fails to talk about the sequence before he can move on DACA, this business about these silly deadlines that Durbin and the folks keep pushing, that wall has to be in place. That border security has to be established. Because unless it is, there can be no such thing as meaningful immigration reform, because we wouldn't still have control over our borders. It's that straightforward.
You're exactly right. Or else they're just going to keep on having these meetings every couple of years. Oh, what are they going to do with these other new batch of illegal immigrants? You know, the super dreamers, we're going to call them next. I mean, come on. So the wall is imperative. I believe the president knows that. He's going to fulfill his campaign promise.
Charlie Kirk, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Good to see you, Lou. Thanks.
That's it for us tonight. Thanks for being with us. Congressman Andy Biggs, Francis Rooney among our guests tomorrow. Good night from New York.